Hey, Talkhouse listeners, it's Josh Modell. This week, I've got an extra special treat to share with you from our friend Craig Finn and his podcast, That's How I Remember It. Craig just released an excellent new solo record called Always Been. Rolling Stone called it, quote, the 70s LA record of his dreams, which he made with another favorite musician of ours, Adam Granduciel of the War on Drugs. That naturally led to Adam's appearing on Craig's podcast to talk about making the record, among many other things, including touring together and, oddly, bootleg band merch. Check it out, and we'll see you next week.
Hey, I'm Craig Finn. This is my podcast. It's called That's How I Remember It. Each episode, I talk to a creative person about their work and how their memory affects the stories they tell others, as well as the stories they tell themselves. Today, my guest is Adam Granduciel, the leader of the War on Drugs and the producer of my solo record, Always Been, which just came out last week. I'm absolutely thrilled to have him here. I met Adam in 2009, but our friendship got off to a strange start. In 2008, I heard the first War on Drugs record, Wagon Wheel Blues. I asked him to open for the Hold Steady on a European tour. Their band left a few days early, but on the eve of our tour, a Hold Steady band member got very ill, and we had to cancel the whole tour, stranding the War on Drugs in Europe with no shows to play. We talked about that a little here. In 2009, the Hold Steady tried to make it up to them by inviting them on a U.S. tour. We were able to show up for that. We had a really cool time going across the country with them. That's where our friendship started. A few years ago, Adam invited me to Philly to the War on Drugs Drugcember celebration, and we did a few songs together. My own song, Blankets, Warren Zevon's Play It All Night Long, John Hyatt's Walk On, Bob Seger's Against the Wind. We had a blast, and maybe that's where the seeds were kind of planted to make a record. In later 2023, I visited Adam's studio in LA. I asked him if he'd produce my record, and he asked if I had the songs. I played him my song Bethany. We started about 2 weeks later. Asking Adam to produce the record is one of the better decisions I've ever made. He helped me in so many ways to make a record that I'm really proud of. Adam is a massive talent, but also a great friend, and I'm extremely grateful for him. There's a ton to talk about here, so let's not delay. Here's our talk. Hope you enjoy. Adam Granduciel from the War on Drugs. Thank you for joining us here on That's How I Remember It. I think you've listened to the show before, so I think you know where I'm going with this. I'm going to start with the same question I ask everyone. Do you consider yourself someone who has a good memory?
I would say for certain things. My bandmates are always saying how I can remember every show, like every detail. And there are obviously black spots in that memory. But with music stuff, I tend to remember a lot of details, shows from 15 years ago, backstages. But what happened 3 days ago, is sometimes, tricky. But musically, like even studio stuff, like I'll just remember exactly what I used on this thing and what it looked like when I was doing it and where we were and who else was there. And so, yeah.
Is that useful? Like when you go to make credits for a record, are you able to go back into the room?
I can go back in the room pretty easily. Yeah.
Is it spurred by listening, or can you just literally say that song, who was there? What was I using?
Usually by listening, but I can get back to it pretty simply.
Your bandmates told me you're really good at the show, at remembering the show. I feel like I am too. We'll get to it, but I want to ask you about something later. But how do you think it affects your music making, your songwriting, etc.?
I think for me, where I'm working on stuff, and it's usually a longer process of, I guess, what I'd consider the heart of a song. Like when you're playing it by yourself, even in its infant stage, you just know when something feels right, when it's an idea or three chords that you want to investigate more, even the cadence of your scratch vocal, or you just say, oh yeah, there's something in here. And I think sometimes that can be, by the time you're mixing a song or a record, that can be 4 years from when 5 years from when you have that first voice memo or something, I guess you kind of just have to remember what it was about that earliest version of the song that you still sort of, because people always say, like, don't you get tired of when you're going on tour? Like, don't you get tired of singing the same song? It's like, not really. It's also like not compared to like working on the song. Like working on the song is you spend way more time with it than you ever do touring it, or playing it once a night for whatever.
I just had this conversation with someone. I was sort of saying that, like, okay, so there's a different feeling. When we play Stuck Between Stations, the crowd goes wild. And I get a lot of energy off that. Where, like, when we play a new song that we've never played before, I get a lot of energy off of, like, are we going to do this? Like,
yeah,
is this going to fall apart? And I think when I'm writing the set list, it's sort of a balance between those two levels of excitement. Like,
yeah.
Yeah. And I don't know if you feel the same way.
I mean, when you're doing a show and you have, 90 minutes, 100 minutes, whatever, you're like, all right, this one, great. People are going to be really excited about that. And I'm excited to play that. I'm also really excited to play this one that always falls off the rails in sometimes the best way, or maybe, hey, let's open with that demo that I just did last week that I played you guys, and it'll be totally gibberish vocals, and maybe one guy will record it on his iPhone and I have no idea what it was, but let's just do it,
You did that recently. I mean, I remember you doing that in the past since we've been working on the record. Didn't you play a show where you kind of played?
Yeah, we did the Just Like Heaven in Pasadena. And I was like, let's just open with that new song that I've been working on.
I used to get really hung up on when we'd play new songs. And when people first started recording things on phones, I would get really kind of angry. And I remember flipping this guy off.
Yeah.
Because he was recording a new song. Because I said it was a new song and he just got his phone out.
Yeah.
But now it sort of feels cool.
And that's a good point, because I do feel like there is a thing where it's like, no, man, this is just for us.
Mm-hmm.
Like in the room, like we're going to do this cover of whatever,
Yeah.
Against the Wind. And that's just for us because you're in the room right now. And this is, why we're doing it. But yeah, like we're going to do this new song and a bunch of phones go up. You're like, oh, okay, maybe this is better.
I think we're dealing with the tail end of it though, because like, I feel like all these people who record a lot of stuff on their phones are figuring out that there's no audience for it. It's like,
right.
Your wife, you're going to go home and your wife doesn't want to see that. Like,
yeah.
So maybe just stay here. Just keep your phone in your pocket.
Just exactly. Yeah. Check out this new song. This doesn't sound good.
I'm trying to go to bed,
Yeah.
The thesis on this show is there's always like one of the things comes up is details from your own life, finding the place in your songs. And, for instance, on your last record, you mentioned that par 3 golf course, which is like a real place. That's somewhere you really go.
Well, not
right?
anymore. They took it down, but yeah.
Oh, that's
Weddington. This is wonderful, tennis and golf public place in Studio City where I saw King Buzzo putting one day. I was
Nice.
walking my kid. Bruce was like 8 months. I just moved over there. I was like, is that King Buzzo playing golf? And then like, obviously, like, it'd be tough to not recognize him. And then I went home and looked at, he's like avid golfer. I was like, oh, great. But yeah, some local school bought it. It was like, it had been like a years long Save Weddington sort of thing.
But that's a classic example of something like you're needing something in the song and you're pulling it from real life. And then it goes away.
I think also I was proud of myself because I do love things like that. Like I do love when it's like a real thing. And I felt like that was something that was kind of lacking in some of my stuff for whatever reason. Like when I was living in Philadelphia, I could have mentioned Johnny Brenda's or any number of things that were a fixture in my life. And I just never really went that direction, I guess, with some songwriting. But on that Occasional Rain, it just felt like in that moment too, it was just a huge part of my daily routine of, having a new kid, but also just walking up there during COVID and hitting balls. And it was just like, it meant a lot.
Was that your first record that you wrote entirely after moving to LA?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's kind of the first LA record, I guess. That's cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Deeper Understanding, a lot of that stuff had been written And demoed in Philly for sure.
Going way back, do you have like early memories of music moving you? You know, like, do you have a first thing that was like, this is awesome?
I definitely do. Like, I remember hearing Paradise City on the radio in bed. Like, it was at night, probably. I feel like it was probably a Sunday night, and knowing I probably wasn't supposed to be hearing it because I wasn't actively listening to it. I shared a room with my older brother forever. So we just had one radio, and it was like, I'm not supposed to be hearing this right now. But it was like, I didn't really know what it was, but I knew I liked it, you know?
Did you pursue it? Did you keep listening to the radio? Were you like pursuing music, that kind of thing?
Yeah, I really started, 1990 is when I really got into it. Like, really started pursuing music and buying CDs. 91, I guess, never mind. Having an older brother, I was just whatever he had, because he was 4 years ahead of me. So, you know, his REM tapes and Harvest Moon and Herbie Hancock. Those were like the big ones, like REM, Petty. He had, Into the Great Wide Open. And then whatever my mom listened to, which is basically just Roy Orbison. And she had one Roy Orbison tape in her car. That was sort of when she would pop it in, which was once in a while. It was that, you know. The one with, I think it was Mystery Girl.
When did you start playing guitar then? Or is that how you started? Guitar or piano?
Oh, it's guitar. Yeah. I started in, basically 7th grade. Like, my friend Jeff, his dad, and now that I have a kid, I get it. It's like he basically made his son learn drums so he had someone to jam with.
Yeah.
So Jeff's dad, and Jeff would make 4-track recordings. And I went over to Jeff's in 7th grade. We were new friends and went over to play basketball or something. And then I plugged into his dad's rig, which was just like, you know, a Washburn into like a digital effects unit and do a PV. And I think Jeff was on the drums or something and dad was on bass. And I was just I was like, the ground was vibrating and I was like, didn't know a chord or anything. I was like, I need more of this. So we would go over to shoot hoops. He basically had like his own little apartment as a 7th grader right off the garage. So you could easily just be like, I'm going to use the bathroom and then go in and just end up plugging in the Washburn.
When you try to suspend humbleness for a second, when you started playing like with your friends, picked up a guitar and started to learn chords, were you good? Like right away? Were you pretty good, close? Like, were you better than your friends or no?
No, definitely not. I learned like the 3 chords, E minor, A, and G. And I remember it being, it was all I really thought about, but I didn't have it. My parents were still reluctant to get me a rig. So I basically have to go to Jeff's if I wanted to play those 3 chords again. But there were kids in my school that were playing after school in the little practice rooms that were significantly better. And they had a band and they were playing covers and they had like a pedal board, like a digital effects pedal board. And I looked up to those guys a lot. But it took, maybe about a year. Like I've told the story before, but right below my orthodontist's office was this, in Newton, Mass, was this music shop. And they had like a couple Les Pauls. I think they were like knockoff Les Pauls, whatever, Takai's or something.
Yeah.
And I was just so obsessed with the guitar, but I had nobody to talk to it about, And so I would call the music shop, be like, yeah, what's the price on that Les Paul? And they'd be like, eventually they were like, why are you calling here? Because I was the only place I knew, and I could be like, hey, tell me a little bit more about, I'm interested, And I had just probably come from like the orthodontist and I popped my head in there or something. So no, I was just learning to play the things that I was hearing on the radio, and songs that we all liked. And
what year do you think were you going to the orthodontist?
Well, because of a series of mistakes made by said orthodontist, I was going for about 6 years.
Yeah. Okay. I'm just curious. If I was at Boston College at the same year and you were in Newton, Mass at the orthodontist,
very close to Lake Street. Yeah.
Yeah. I was in 93. I graduated. So we may have.
Oh yeah. I would have been there.
Yeah. We may have been just crossing
definitely.
paths.
Yeah. I was definitely going to the orthodontist like 92 through basically senior year, because they basically didn't take an x-ray for 5 years, and they realized that all the stuff they were cranking wasn't attached to anything. So
Oh, yeah, classic error. How about four tracking? Like, did you get a four track at some point and start making home recordings?
I didn't. The first thing I had of my own was an 8-track digital recorder I bought when I, was 18.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Jeff and his dad, they had the Porta Studio.
Yep.
And we would mess with that. But I wasn't really so interested in that until I think I got my own thing, my own unit.
Was that the start of something?
Yeah, when I got my own unit was when I really got into like writing more, recording, overdubbing, just sort of being obsessed with like what I was doing. Before it was just guitar and learning songs and getting better and weird tunings and slide and all these things and playing with people when you could, but never like, there wasn't a lot of writing and there wasn't a lot of like recording. It was just sort of, we just loved playing guitar,
How about other instruments, synth, keys? Did that come later?
Yeah, when I moved into a house in Berkeley with a bunch of people, there was an upright and I had my recording unit. So it was kind of like, oh, this house is a piano. So I could, record the piano. So I would learn just, 3-note chords, basically. That was the start of that.
Was that after college? Like, did you go out to Berkeley? How long were you out there?
I was in Oakland and Berkeley for about, actually, it was I think just under a year.
Okay.
I feel like it was much longer, but it was about a year.
Those years drag on.
It's like, I would have thought it was 3 years, but I was like, oh no, I basically got out there in June, and then me and my friend Julian took a train, the cross-country Amtrak, back to the East Coast in like April. So it was only a handful of months, really. But it crammed a lot of stuff into those 11 months.
Right. What about like gear? I'm thinking about like I know you're interested in gear. You have a studio that you get stuff for, and I'm kind of thinking about memory in regards to that. Do you still hunt for gear? Are you always looking for stuff?
Yeah, there's certain things I never had that I would like. But yeah, I mean that sort of itch is like waning now. But because one day, because sometimes I walk into my studio, I'm like, man, there's so much shit in here. I want to get rid of all of it. Like, fire sale it,
Right.
But you do hold on to things for that reason, because everything, I'm very sentimental and I'm a little bit of a pack rat. So it's just like, oh, well, I did, I don't know. I have a Rhodes in my house that I never use, but I'm like, I've tried to sell it a few times and then people bought it. I'm like, actually, I'm not going to sell it. And I didn't even use it on any songs, but I'm just like, I don't know. It does look, I have a plant on it now. It looks nice. I mean, I like being surrounded by instruments. I like being surrounded by the idea that that something around you could give birth to a song you love, or something. If you're just like walking around your house listening to voice memos and you walk up to a Rhodes and play along to it, you're like, oh, there's something in there,
Yeah.
But I have been selling a lot of gear on Reverb, not with I just sell it without any fanfare, because I think that stuff's pretty lame, to be honest. But I sold a tape echo that I used forever on a bunch of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And this kid was like super psyched. So I was like, oh, that's great,
Did you buy something from Salvage at some point, like a guitar?
Most likely. I bought a guitar case from him, I think.
That's what it was. And you said, keep the stuff in there. Like, keep any of the ephemera that you have around. You don't need to clean it up. Yeah, you don't need to clean it out. And I thought about that. I was just the other day, I was in London. Mick Jones from The Clash had this thing where he displayed a bunch of stuff he had. And I found myself being really maybe because of the Hard Rock Cafe or whatever, whenever they're like, this is his guitar, I'm like, I don't care. But when it's this is a backstage pass from the 79 tour, I'm like, I want to see more of that. I don't know why that is, but it feels more real, or it feels less deified. It feels more like the part of rock and roll that I can relate to at this point. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the stuff that you jam into a gig bag at the end of a tour, or the stuff that just accrues and you don't really throw away, that just ends up if I sell stuff or a guitar, I will look in the case and I'll be like, oh wow, I remember we got these stickers at South by in 2012. I was like, was that the last time I really looked through this? Or I must have said, because, sometimes like, oh man, free stickers, sick,
Right.
Like, it's just like everything is exciting sometimes. And like you save a lot of it and it all means something. And actually that's funny because that case, I'm shipping a bunch of gear to North Carolina for some recording and I'm using that case.
All right.
I actually went and got it a couple days ago. So I'm going to open it up this afternoon and look in it, see what's in it, see what I had Steve keep.
I mean, I think we had a similar conversation. I know in your studio that, like one of my favorite Hold Steady memories is walking up to a show and seeing bootleg Hold Steady merch. And I know you were talking. I think you have some examples in your studio of finding stuff in Mexico, right?
Yeah, Mexico, and there's a few that we had got in Italy, in Milan. But the bootleg stuff is incredible because. Yeah, the last time we were in Mexico, someone had made basically like a War on Drugs track jacket.
Oh man,
It's just the strangest combination of colors, and they find like a random logo and they put it on like a random part of the jacket, and it's like a black and white, like fizzled out design. It's very strange. Like if your merch company designed that, you'd be like, I don't know what you guys are doing over there, but. You get it off the street in Mexico, and it's like the greatest piece of merch you've ever seen.
It speaks to something like we did it. You know what I mean? Like someone out there is trying to make a fast buck off you, and it's weirdly flattering.
Yeah, yeah, and like the little references to the song that they're making their own art, and you're like, oh, I see what they're doing there. Yeah, I love it. I mean, to the point where it's like send somebody out and get all of it.
Yeah.
It's
I was like gazing when I came across this blanket with all this bootleg Hold Steady merch. I was just gazing upon it. I was like, I don't want to go into the show. I just want to like watch this bootleg merch.
Yeah,
but we're gonna have to do it. So when we made a record last year, when we sort of started the process, you were deep. I'm pretty sure in the Live Drugs Again. Like that was kind of you were guys. When I showed up, you were, I think, kind of wrapping it, or at least deeply working on it. It came out in September 24. And I'm wondering about that process. Like, it's the second live record, and it's more involved than a lot of bands' live records. But are you taping everything?
Yeah, everything gets recorded because of the technology of the consoles, really, because they use it for virtual playback.
Like, so when you're going to assemble a live record, second live record, and you talk about remembering shows, are you like, man, Boulder, Colorado last spring, that was a great Under Pressure or whatever. And do you have to listen to everything?
Oh man. Like we used a lot from, on the newest live record from, why am I blanking on the place in Arkansas? The great little town.
Fayetteville.
Is it Fayetteville? Yeah, I think it's Fayetteville. Yeah. It was like this beautiful outdoor show. We had never been to Fayetteville before. It's Bentonville.
I don't even know what that is. Is that where is that like Walmart? No, am I thinking?
Yeah, it is Walmart. You're right. That is where it is, because that's why it's this really beautiful little utopia. Great outdoor show. There's like this whole like art center right next to it. There's a great coffee shop in there. Like really wonderful community. And there was a festival happening the next night. So I just remembered that show being magical. It was like great crowd. Like we walked off the stage, but I couldn't tell you what the set list was, but I knew I was like, we really had a great show. Just like I remember 4 years ago in Cologne, Germany, that we had a great show. Like I was playing in a t-shirt and it was just like, you weren't even thinking,
Yeah.
And it just, at least me, it's like, sometimes I can have like the best show, like where it makes everything worth it. And I'll walk off and John or someone will be like, man, I sucked. I was like, I thought we were all where I was. I thought we were all there, but that's the way it is.
I have a show, the Corner Hotel in Melbourne in 2009 in Melbourne, Australia. And I said it's our best show Hold Steady's ever played. And the other guys couldn't remember it.
Yeah.
Like,
right. Yeah. No, that's the thing. It's like, or vice versa, I'll just struggle the whole night hearing myself or trying to get into it. But for these live records, I sort of rely on that memory of that night was like really loose, fun. And so whatever we played is going to be fine.
Yeah.
Because there's going to be something in it. Because I think if you start listening to like different versions, you're just going to get lost in, I don't know, and you have to mix them to make them sound like music. So I just start, with these shows like Austin, my engineer at the studio, I would just give him, when we started that process, I just gave him a list of like, I think 8 or 9 shows, and was basically like, just import all these songs, do like a rough mix of all these shows.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's where we'll start,
Yeah.
And if something's obviously wrong, then we'll have to go back. But I think our whole record is basically in these shows. And it was at the end.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
So you have a pretty good, that's interesting. You have a pretty good concept, but it must help to have Austin, to have him prepare it and not have to go deep into listening to all those shows at once, because that would be maddening to me.
Yeah. And there is, because you have to do a fair amount of post-production.
Yeah. Right.
Trickery, which is great to sort of give the illusion of what's happening, is music,
I want to back up and talk, because I want to talk about the record we've made. And
yeah.
But our origin story is unique, and I want to get it on tape, because in 2008, I heard Wagon Wheel Blues. I said we should get this band War on Drugs to open for the Hold Steady in Europe. And you guys, we booked this tour of Europe. You left a little bit earlier than us, and on the eve of the tour, our guitar player, Tad, got sick. We had to cancel the whole tour, and you were stranded.
Yeah.
What happened there? I mean, I think you've told me, but I'm not sure.
Well,
I mean, I know what happened.
It ended up being one of the greatest things to ever happen to us. But it was, we were offered this tour, playing great rooms. I forget, 1,000 capacity.
Yeah.
It was starting in England, and it was going all the way to Stockholm. And we had never done anything like this in Europe. We had done 2 weeks, the summer of 2008, like 10 or 12 days in Europe doing some festivals.
Okay.
And then this tour, it was going to be myself and Dave, our drummer Mike, and then our friend Jason McNeely playing guitar. He wasn't really in the band, but I had sort of recruited him to do this tour. And so we fly to England, London, and then we land, our label guy picks us up. He's like, great to see you. He's like, there's a small chance the show tomorrow night is going to be canceled. Like, cool. There's like 30 more shows after that. All good.
Yeah.
Use a day to rest. 10 minutes later, he's like, whole tour's canceled. I was like, okay.
Oh.
But so we slept on his floor for a night or two, and and then after 2 nights, he was definitely starting to get a little bit like, and we didn't know what to do. We, as a band, we had no real infrastructure. We had no money. We flew over with some guitars, we had put deposits on things. And so the label was fishing for things to do and get off this guy's floor and sort of find something to do. One of those things we ended up doing was like an open mic night in Coventry to like, 11 people.
Yeah.
I think we got to play 3 songs, and we ended up getting this uncut. It was like this uncut showcase at some bar in London. And I loved Uncut Magazine. I mean, it was like my favorite music magazine. And we were playing first of 4. And we went and did our thing. We played for 30 minutes. And then Alan Jones, the editor of Uncut, in the next article wrote basically a blurb, which was like, I have seen a great band, and that's all it was like, this great band hopped up, last minute we added to the bill, and they have 1 record out. And I feel like that little blurb got us through like 3 years of touring, over there. It was like, it's all it took was like this little thing. And it was a huge gift. And, I stayed in touch with Alan. And so I think we, and that tour was supposed to end with us playing with Animal Collective in Valencia, Spain. So our label flew us home after like 11 days in the UK.
Yeah.
We were pretty but also because we didn't really know anything about what it was like to be in a band your size. So we didn't know, like, we just didn't understand that, like, things can happen and that, especially as we've gotten older, like health and family take precedence to tour. And that was foreign to it. We were just like, whatever, man. We had a deposit on a van. Like, couldn't they have called us? Like, but it's like, you learn that
Sure.
things happen in band, like they happen in sort of internally,
Yeah.
So we flew home, and then we ended up flying back a couple weeks later to do this gig with Animal Collective in Valencia. The label, that's, I think, the last time I ever had a label book a flight. It was like the most ridiculous travel day to save probably $100. It was like Kuwait Air to Dublin, and then train is like just the most ridiculous. And then like ended with like a 6-hour train ride from Bilbao to Valencia. It's just something ridiculous, to do one show. But I mean, that's what you do, I mean.
Yeah, and in '09, we tried to make it up to you. We brought you out in the States.
Yeah.
I remember when it finally, on the last day, you guys left us a note, which was super nice, but it ended with "Thanks for showing up this time." But I was just curious because you said earlier you remember shows. I looked it up just before we got on. 13 shows. Real quick, how many do you think? Wow. How many places you think you can name that we played together on that '09 tour?
Well, we started in Albany.
Yep.
Where I fell down the stairs holding a 4x12 cabinet. Then we did Buffalo, right?
Yep.
In that weird carpeted, like neon lit room.
Yep, the Trelf.
Right. And then I know we did that Christian college, Calvin College. I don't know where it was though.
Grand Rapids, Michigan. Very
Grand
good.
Rapids. I know we did that like basement St. Louis, was it?
Yep.
Where I used like a weekly newspaper stand as a keyboard stand. What city was that?
That was in St. Louis, and if you're doing it in order, you're missing 2 between Grand Rapids and St. Louis.
Did you do anything in Ohio?
No, we did one. One should be memorable because there was like a party
on the bus.
No, your label was there.
Oh, in Bloomington.
Yeah,
at Jake's.
Yeah, at Jake's. Yeah, that was a good show. I remember that show being epic.
Yeah, that was a great show.
And also Urbana at the college, University of Illinois.
Right. I remember where we stayed.
Yep.
The
Gargoyle was the name of St. Louis. We did the Picador in Iowa City, which was, I think, the Gabe's, but with a new name, but I'm not sure.
Where's Vintage Vinyl? Is that Iowa City or is that?
That's St. Louis, isn't it?
That's St. Louis. Okay, that's what I remember, was going to Vintage Vinyl and then playing that sort of cafeteria at the university type thing.
Yeah. And Omaha at the Slowdown.
Oh, yeah, Omaha. That's right. Slowdown.
I remember that one. I remember doing laundry there. That's about...
I remember the same thing.
Boulder, Colorado, Fox Theater.
Okay.
I remember that being good. I like being there. Salt Lake City, Urban Lounge. Don't remember it super well. That's a big drive.
I feel like I've played there so many times since that I'm just going to conflate shows, but sounds about right.
Okay, so now we got one that doesn't sound right to me. Reno Underground. I don't think that happened. I think we played... No, that's the one. That's when we played Las Vegas. Do we play at the Beauty Bar?
Beauty Bar. We did Beauty Bar outside.
Yep, outside. And then the classic one at Harrah's in Tahoe, which is a legendary show, we were accompanied by video screens with like Babbling Brooks and all that.
Well, also because you were in the bus, so we woke up in Vegas, and I remember it was like very hot. It was like high 90s, super dry. That was like when we were unloading the van at night before in the hotel, Days Inn or whatever. There was all these locusts. So we woke up super hot, drove north through Nevada, through literal ghost towns, like towns that had been decimated. There was just still like empty cars in the gas stations, and hit multiple windstorms.
Yeah.
And then when we were like an hour and a half out from South Tahoe, basically started snowing.
Yeah.
And by the time we got to the top, it was full on blizzard, and we're dressed in tank top and shorts from Vegas.
Yeah.
It was like, took us way longer, obviously, than we had expected. And then I remember that Harris show as basically I played a lot of the songs on like a 12-string acoustic through an amp. And I think I started that gig with 9 strings on it. And I finished it with 3.
I remember your stage banter that night being particularly funny. You know, I mean, like it was a wild scene, and there weren't that many people there, and I think a significant portion had just kind of wandered in from the casino.
Yeah,
it was definitely one of those. But you know, those are the memorable ones. We wrapped,
and they gave us
food.
I mean,
right?
to be fair, yeah, they gave us. We each had our own hotel room, which was unheard of, and like a food voucher, and you know, we were up gambling till 4 a.m, and
yeah,
woke up with a half-eaten turkey sandwich next to me. I was like, "This is living, man!" Like a Starbucks coupon. Oh, wow, I'm never leaving Harris.
Well, we wrapped in Sacramento at Harlow's, and I remember the one thing I remember about that, which is something sometimes you remember shows because of anxiety, and I'd lost my voice. I remember that one was really bad, and I was like really stressed about it. So that's sometimes the most memorable ones, is the ones where you're really struggling.
Yeah. I remember had enough of those. But that tour was that was like our first like real like meat grinder of a thing. It was like me and Dave still talk about it, and just following you guys in the bus and sort of like, you know, that you roll up to the show and you're playing in an hour, you know, it's like you're setting up 20 minutes to eat something, and then you're just going off, you know?
Well, it planted the seed something, because we just made a record. But I was kind of going back to like when we made the record. I feel like it kind of starts Drugcember in 2022 when I went down to play with you guys. Obviously, we've kept in touch and friends since 2009. And we did that John Hyatt song, Walk On, together.
Yeah.
That feels like maybe the blueprint of the record. Like, it felt really good. It felt so good on stage doing that song. It felt like maybe we should do something. Do you agree?
100%. And I remember hearing that song. I don't remember if we had talked about
you sent me a text
you
out of the blue.
coming down already or something, but I remember hearing that song somewhere and being like, man, this would like, Craig would crush this song. You know, just out of sort of in the ether of like, Craig Finn would just sing the shit out of this song.
I think you sent me a text years before.
Maybe
a year or two before, being like, do you know this song? You must like this song.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, I do like that song. And I hadn't thought about singing it, but then when I was like, oh, I see what he's saying.
Yeah.
And then we did it. And then I saw you November in New Jersey. I came down, saw you play at Asbury, right? Is that where that show was? Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
And I mentioned I was coming to LA. And at that point, I'd written a lot of songs. And we were talking about your studio, which you had already, obviously. And I was thinking about, like, geez, maybe Adam would be a good producer for this record I've written. And I wondered, had you ever produced, before myself, and I know you've produced Sam Fender, had you produced records before for outside artists?
I did this band, Sore Arrows, from Western Mass. Right around when I was working Lost in the Dream in Philly. They were sort of friends through my relationship with Kurt. And so we'd known each other for years, and I produced that record, which I think is an amazing record. It was like only those 4 guys could have done those songs. It's one of those things.
Yeah.
Besides that, no.
Was it something you were thinking about?
I had been thinking about it. I knew that I didn't want to like, I think what I learned with you and Sam was that I was really blessed I was working with 2 really amazing songwriters where the heavy lifting, like it was all just a blank palette, you know, it was like very easy to see the song, you know, and with you, especially too, there was just like, let's make it into a great song. You know, it was already there. Like when you came to LA that first time, I think to see the studio, you just grabbed my 12-string and played me Bethany sitting there. And I was just like, damn, like that's incredible. You know, just, I don't even think I would be able to pick up a guitar, you know, and just play a song like it's like, I was like, wow, I would love to be a part of this thing and whatever he's got cooking.
Like, I definitely have my, like, well, I'm going to ask Adam and see what he says. I don't know if it's the thing he's into or where he's at with his own music at the moment or not. But at the same time, I sort of felt like, because what I know of your process, which is to kind of go on a journey, right? With, like with music, right? And then maybe, come to the words of the song a little later in the process, where I'm actually the opposite. I have like one chord, but I have all the words and all the story. And I was like, well, maybe if we're coming at from opposite, maybe somewhere in the middle, there's something cool. And I actually think that might've been one of my better ideas of my life.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and I think saying yes and sort of just following your lead, really, I was like, I would say the same about my involvement. I mean, it was also just, it was great to sort of like lead the band, but have the heavy lifting of the song already done. Like, I just remember when we did those 2 at Boulevard, we did most of them at my studio, but we did A Walk with a Cane and Crumbs.
Yep.
I think we had 2 days booked at Boulevard in Hollywood and put together a little crack band. It was like, it came together so beautifully, where it was like that thing you always like hope to be a part of in a room, which is where like everyone in the room, like after the first 2 takes of I Walk with a Cane, which I hadn't really, we had played it through on an acoustic, but it really came to life after like the second. I was like, oh, I didn't really see this tune until now.
Yeah.
And it was very exciting. And it was like, you're just doing takes because it's fun, you know? And are you going to listen to all of them? No, but it's like, you could go to any of them and you have your take, you know?
They're getting under your feet a little bit too. But, going back to Bethany, because that's what I went over to see the studio. I played you Bethany. It's the first song I played you. It's the first song I wrote for the record. It's the first song that we recorded. And it's the first song on the record, although I did play with another sequence, which I almost fucked it up, but finally we got our heads straight and got
right. What was gonna be first?
I was gonna play Crumbs first, but I almost hate to mention that because it just does sound like an intro, but I don't want the armchair quarterbacks now to be like, yeah, it would have been perfect if you would have put Crumbs
now that he done it, I did put it in that order. I see what he means.
Yeah, I resequenced it. I think you should consider it, but like, I don't know that I've ever had like such a first song, like, you know what I mean? Like, not to mention when I wrote the song, like I saw the story that became the basis for so many of the other songs on the record.
Yeah.
It isn't literally like it invites you into a world kind of thing that I've never experienced before.
Yeah. Yeah. That was also myself, Dave, and Anthony. They were out in LA. Yeah. We were doing something, maybe recording on this new record or something, but it was just like, oh, they're going to be out here anyway. So Craig's coming out. Let's just hang for a week and let's work on it. Yeah, I mean, Bethany came together pretty quickly. Like the arrangement, just us basically sitting in a circle, mapped it out in the on the session. And
I think you had a couple like slight chord change, just reharmonization of chord suggestions, and we had it pretty quick, and it almost felt like by the end of that song, like this is going to be a record, because at that point I think we were just saying like, let's record a song or two, but there was a funny moment that I'll always remember about that song, is that when I brought in lyric sheets and I handed them out to everyone so they could follow along. And you made a joke when I gave it to you as 2 pages, and you said, "I've never seen anything like this before," because it's a lot of words, which I liked, but also sort of underscored maybe my thought, my good idea about making the record with coming from different angles.
Yeah, I think I was probably talking more about the preparedness. Like, oh wow, we haven't even recorded. You got like you're all ready to go,
Yeah. Well, like there's certain amount of pro you want to come in with, I mean, that's something as I get older, I feel like I value more, a little bit more, like, like your gear has to be kind of taken care of, and, you can't show up with your guitar in a pillowcase. And
even if I can't, like, I'm getting ready for these 2 weeks of sessions in North Carolina, and like, even if I don't have all the lyrics done, I think my preparedness is like, knowing what each song, like what we're going to do on each song, and what the sort of arrangement is, and what we're hoping to, that's where I put the energy of like preparing for the recording trip, you know? And also you coming out to LA, there's something nice about like destination, like I'm going to LA to work for 5 days and I'm going to North Carolina for 11 days to record.
Yeah.
And you can like put all that anxiety and passion into like preparing for it, you know, and mapping out like, oh, here's on this song that I've already started, like, here's how we're going to set up because I want this sound. And I feel like that's like the way it was when I first got an 8-track. You know, it's like
Right.
I'd be waiting tables all night and just thinking about that. Oh, I'm going to go home and do that slide guitar idea and that open tuning. And that's like why that's just what it's all about.
Yeah, maybe seeing it in advance and not being like, oh, so what are we doing? I even think like knowing what time you're going to start or something. Like back when I was a kid, not a kid, but in my 20s in Lifter Puller, it's like, hey, so I don't know, when should we start? Like, I don't know, can you be there at 2? No, I got a dentist appointment, you know, etc.
You told me that actually. That's right. When you, maybe it was John or some one of those records where
John
you were like,
John and
it was like
making a schedule was really
making
big.
a schedule. And I think I've actually kind of stayed with that because here's when we're going to start. If I'm not there, it doesn't mean that you're not supposed to be there.
Right.
You know,
right.
It's like, that's when the thing starts.
When you talk about the destination, I always wanted to make a record in LA. So this was like kind of a fantasy fulfillment for me.
Yeah.
But we'd also bonded over, like, I think I played Zevon accidentally like a martyr with you at Brooklyn Steel. When I was driving the studio, when we were making the record, I would always listen to For Every Man, the Jackson Browne record. And and then the German interviewer I just got off with brought up Tom Petty. And I'd actually been like in a huge Tom Petty thing with Sirius Radio leading into making this record, which I sort of forgot about, but it's true. And some of the simplicity and the real directness was something I was super after. But I was curious, like, because then I thought, studios don't always have windows. And like, can you really make an LA record? But the LA part is like the drive there and drive home, maybe.
Definitely.
And then I got to thinking, like, can you make memories in a studio or can you just make music? And I think I do think shows are more likely to make memories. And then you walk away the studio with your record, you know, with music.
Yeah.
Does that jive?
Every day, like I'll just be dreading, not really dreading, but I gotta do all these. I gotta go to the studio. I should really go to the studio, even if I just go for 3 hours. I gotta pick my kid up. It's just I take a right. I'm driving in the valley. You know, it's in Burbank.
Sure.
I take a right at the airport to go down Thornton Way, and then I just look in front of me, and just the huge mountains right there.
Yeah.
In Burbank, and I'm just like, and at the right time of day, they're just like golden. You know?
Yep.
And every single time I'm just like, man, like I'm ready to go and make some music, you know, and the one window in the studio on the control room looks out at those mountains. So you kind of start the day like, you know, trucks going by, sort of industrial area. You hear trucks, you hear like UPS trucks backing up. And then there's like 5:30, 6 o'clock when all the businesses close and it's just basically quiet on the street. And the mountains turn gold. And I feel like, and I have those 2 skylights that become a little bit less intense.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's sort of when that studio really, when the music really starts feeling right.
Yeah.
It's like 6:30, 7 o'clock.
It's the light.
I feel like guys in my band are always like, I haven't really had that moment where I don't know when this moment would occur, but when I guess after like a guitar overdub where everyone starts like hugging each other, like I think people think that's how it works. Like,
yeah.
And and sometimes like we were saying when we were doing those 2 songs in the more professional place, you can feel that something is great music, you know, like, oh, something in this is happening, but it doesn't mean that you like congratulate, you know, it just happens and you kind of respect it.
This is something that's on my questions. Like, I think like when I listen to Bethany, your guitar solo, and it literally still gives me chills. I can't remember when you did it. Did you do it when I was there? Like,
no, I did it later because that's the thing. It's like, I was trying to do something. And then I feel like I was waiting for everyone to be like, amazing, like,
We
and
are
I was
supposed to
doing
hug you.
take after take, and everybody was like,
Should we
I
order
don't know.
pizza?
They're like, it's because it's impossible to know.
Yeah.
You're just focusing on 14 seconds of a song. And I started overthinking it, and then you're trying to impress somebody in the room, and you're trying to like not do like, oh well, let me be weirder or whatever. And then I think a couple of months later, I redid it
Yeah.
one night. I was just like, this. I had a good sound going for something. I was like, Austin, open up Bethany. I want to do that solo, and I just did it in like three takes or so, because I knew kind of what part of it was the original part, and then there was the second half of the solo, and then it just is, and then and then you don't think about the timing anymore. It just is,
Yeah. Well, and Fletcher's is the other one I wanted to bring up before we get towards the end. But like that one is another one that like I had it. We had kind of a loop that we went somewhere with it, and it felt like maybe it was the one where we did the most work because it wasn't like just like a band song, but it ended up in a place that like again I'm super thrilled with every time. And was that different than any other song you've worked on?
Yeah, I was also like, man, this is such a cool world. There was a couple days of sort of like maybe getting a little stuck on it, which is like
Yep.
a tough feeling in a studio. I hate feeling stuck, or you're trying to like figure a song out or something. It feels kind of like it I'm not really good with that, like with music, like when you feel like it's not working,
Yeah.
because so much of music is just feeling like it just should be so natural and easy.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's hard when you're supposed to maybe be the guy or to figure out why it doesn't feel that way yet.
Yep.
And I knew it was a really special world you were living in. I loved the lyrics, and I loved what you wanted it to be. So I think that was just the thing where I was kind of like, all right, give me the mouse, because I got into this world with having Austin, my engineer, where I don't really get into the computer as much, like not into the computer, like editing more, but like deep into the session. And I think on that one, I needed to sort of, just look and see all the stuff we had and just start like really arranging all the little bits we had and muting a bunch of stuff.
Yeah. There was a
And we
subtraction.
Yeah.
But also I think like some of the guitar, when we started to play a little guitar on it, maybe it kind of connected it to our other world in a way that maybe helped. I don't know. To me, that was a breakthrough.
I think there was also, you never know, like sometimes you could be driving to the studio and listening to something, and whatever you're listening to is sort of like, I think maybe I remember on Fletcher's, I just plugged in the envelope filter.
Yeah.
And maybe I had been like listening to Jerry Garcia band or something.
Yeah.
I've been like, oh yeah, you know what? Like, and not in relation to your record, but being like, oh yeah, I should really bust out that cool envelope filter I have.
Yeah.
And so that's sometimes where your day starts. And then you end up 10 hours later, kind of on Fletcher's, like finding a little vibe.
Yeah.
And just because something else triggered your memory, your passion for whatever you're diving into.
I want to tell you two things that I learned about making the record through you, which is, for one, I like through watching you work, like I as a War on Drugs fan, it sort of made me listen to War on Drugs differently, in that I've always thought of the War on Drugs as a guitar band, and I see how much sort of effort you put into rhythm and synth stuff in making the record, that it sort of reframed when I listened to the War on Drugs. And when we played together, I guested at Newport, all of a sudden I became aware of how many synths were on stage. And I was like, oh, maybe it's a synth band. So, but like seeing you work sort of reframed the way I listen to it, the band, which is one of my favorite bands, but that also you have I don't know, reputation might be the word, but I think of you as someone who collects gear or is comfortable using gear, has a lot of good stuff, but it feels like the people that you've assembled in your band is maybe the biggest feat. It's a great group of people with very little drama and very good, musical sense. And as a compliment, I think like that's, and, as I get older, I say that's the real, for longevity, that's the key is to create a great group. So I would give you a lot of accolades for choosing carefully and wisely, I think.
Well, I've been very blessed with, meeting Dave when we worked together in Philly, who's, has become and just an amazing bass player, writer on his own, producer, everything. He's just an amazing best friend. And through him, I met Robbie, because like they had been in a band and I saw Robbie playing acoustic guitar with somebody being like, well, I like the way that guy's strumming the guitar and all these. And then, I kind of, Anthony, we played a show with, and Dave, and everybody, John, I knew from junior high.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because Natchez was friends with my brother.
So great.
My brother went to John's bar mitzvah or vice versa. John went to my brother. It was just one of those things like,
yeah.
And Charlie and I moved to Philly around the same time. And, it's the best. It's the only way to really keep doing it is when you guys can live and coexist for 6-7 weeks at a time and not really ever get sick of each other. Everyone just knows how to navigate their own time and music and fulfilling their own musical feats. And
yeah, I mean, you have an eye for it. Curious if anything you learned from making this record. Always been.
I think I learned, a great song is it sounds cheesy, but a great song is a great song, and you can paint around the edges and try to turn it into whatever you want it to be. But we could have done anything to Clayton.
Right.
And I would have been just moved by your storytelling and sometimes to make something, which is not something I learned on this, but to make something feel effortless sometimes takes the most effort, like postcards where things sound, all of a sudden one day you're like, wait, why is this, something's weird.
Right.
And then then weeks being like, what's going on with this again? And but then you fix it and then you forget about it. Like then you hear it for the first time months later, you're like, oh yeah, great. Sounds awesome. Sounds natural. I forget all the emails, but
yeah. All right. Well, I'm going to wrap by saying, speaking of your band, you, Dave, Robbie, Kathleen Edwards, who's on the record as well a bunch. We're all playing a show at May 30th at the Bowery Ballroom. It's going to be super fun. Joe Russo, Josh Kaufman, Nelson Devereaux, and I really look forward to that. I'm thrilled with the way this record came out. I really appreciate you coming on, both to talk about all of this, but producing the record. And thanks for everything.
Yeah. Thank you, Craig. It was an honor.
Thank you, Adam Granduciel. Really enjoyed it. Excited for what comes next with the war on drugs. Very much appreciate him joining me here. If you're in the New York City area, come see us play at the Bowery Ballroom May 30th. Craig Finn and the People of Substance Band, featuring a one-night only all-star band. I'd say it's an all-star band. Band members include Robbie Bennett, Dave Hartley, and Adam from the War on Drugs, Kathleen Edwards, a former guest on this podcast, Josh Kaufman, another former guest on this podcast, Joe Russo is going to play drums. Nelson Devereaux is going to be there. He's also on tour with me right now as we open for Bob Mould, which has been a blast. Thanks to anyone who's come to the shows, said hello. All information for all this at craigfinn.net. Thank you for listening. Keep coming back. Listen and subscribe. We've got some incredible guests coming up. And I hope you'll check out my new record. It's called Always Been. I'm really proud of it. I'm Craig Finn, and that's how I remember it.